Why is Kyoto so hated? When the finals dropped Season 3, it came with a lot of content, arguably mid, not Yubo, and a lot of glaring problems. However, out of all the things added, there was one that stood out as the most hated addition. It was the new map, Kyoto. Kyoto is considered to be the most universally shit map. Known to have many problems and inconsistencies, I'm gonna go through all of them so I can answer the question, why is Kyoto so hated? It has horrible fucking performance. When you're in the bamboo area, you're going to be getting minus 20 frames at the minimum. The bamboo area has always struggled with performance, and they have to keep going back to it every single patch notes to try and fix it. If that wasn't bad enough, just remember that each different area has a completely different strategy. Seeing that it was one of the first big maps, it came into question of how are we even supposed to play it. Let me explain. The aforementioned Kyoto is split into 4 parts, all interconnected with the center temples. We have the cliffside, lake and residential, the center temples, and obviously the bamboo forest. It's not really split into 4 parts, more like 6 or 7 of them, but it's important to note that it's split into 4 greater parts. But first, let me talk about the changing heights of the cliffside and hillside areas. To really understand why Kyoto is so hated, you need to understand near the cliffside area there is a really hard to push cashout, which is almost a guaranteed loss. This is to show that one area of the map you never want to be in, the lower section. Here you'll get picked off by those holding temples, being people on cliffside, basically stopping you from progressing to either of those areas. The problem with this map imbalance is that there's no way to counteract it. If you're in the lower area, specifically the villa compound, you can't push cliffside if there's a cashout there, because the jump pad required to go up into cliffside is almost a guaranteed minus 100 health each time you take it. And then trying to go through temples around to cliffside also will not end up working, as running away will only waste more time. Basically, you don't want to be in the lower sections because people from both cliffsides and temples will be a massive pain in the ass. Next, the calmer part. We have lake and residential. Lake breaks into 2 halves, which breaks into 2 halves, which breaks into 2 halves, which breaks into lake splits off into residential area or the hillside area, the path from Pavilion South, or whatever goes down. Lowering its height, this is important for later. And on the opposite side, you have an easy movement into hillside or admin. Hillside is in the region of the dreaded bamboo forest. It's important to note that even though they're counted as different areas, have different names, and are meters apart, hillside and cliffside are both fucked to push. The problem arises with the power that high ground offers here. In both scenarios, you can camp on a house, perch like a bird, and stop any pressure. You could literally perch like a bird with goo and bamboo. And it's crazy, but there are 2 possible fucking cashouts here. Doesn't Embark just love their OP perching positions? The problem with all this high ground dilemmas is the fact that it's on Kyoto in the exact same fucking spot on the map. Basically, you get punished for pushing upwards, and that's a big problem, because the finals should be about destruction and being able to level a playing field. The only problem is you can't level fucking mountains. So the game forcing you to play around height disparities in some ways encourages creativity, but not the right kind, because now players have to figure out some way of either A, sneaking into a cashout in a game that's loud as shit, or B, trying to just break through. And 90% of the time, if you're playing against opponents with aim, you're gonna have to take the first option, making the game much slower paced, which is what it's not intended to be played as. So now obviously I've spent 2 minutes into the video explaining why high ground is so strong. Going back to the lower side of residential, you'll see that not only is the street on a downward incline, but it's also open as fuck and offers 0 movement value. You would be better off skipping it. Instead of going around residential, you should be going through it into temples, because I guarantee you it will be faster to go to any other cashout, or at least a little more guaranteed. Because pushing guest house and entrance from the left side of the map will get you fucked up. The roofs on Guest House are higher than the slopes, so you still somehow lose to a guy with low ground, but not really, because it's actually high ground. So nobody wants to be at a high ground disadvantage, but you know what is an advantage? Liking and subscribing, as it really helps me out and pushes me to make more videos. And I really appreciate all the support you guys give me for the videos I make, and I need the feedback to help push me in the algorithm. Okay, so I've covered 3 of the 4 areas. Time to talk about the center temples, which connect the entire map and have the greatest movement opportunities. Considering the first 2 games in cashout last 7 to 8 minutes, it is smart to try and take as much time here, as the more you stick to the center, the more value you'll get from its jump pads and zipline possibilities. The center is the one saving grace for this map. At least there is some hope with speed, but only for getting down to the lower section and villa compound, which I've already addressed is just hell. As much as I'd like to talk about every single part of this map equally, it's really hard to compare any of them, as I've already said, the map is imbalanced, making parts like the center a lot less interesting to talk about, because as good as they are for a connector, there's not a lot to do here, considering there's only 1 or 2 cashouts. In short, Kyoto is maybe not the best map, but it's okay. The map is okay. There are some weak parts, but they can't be changed. And I would point out that maybe it's okay for a map to be so inconsistent because it makes the players have to adapt to a map and not use the same stupid strategy over and over again. To be fair, Kyoto has lots of problems with height and distance imbalances, making it more long range, single fire and semi-auto map, sniper to CBO1, and really any weapons that benefit a long range playstyle are visible here. Embark, I don't hate Kyoto as much as I say I do, because you can't change it. Changing Kyoto wouldn't make it Kyoto anymore. Just move those damn cashouts. Functionally, I think Kyoto is a good map. I mean, it has to be after having 400 fucking balance changes dedicated to it. It's good to point out the critical parts of any map. As a community, we can always push our game developers to try and do better. And obviously, they've heard from us. They have made as many improvements to Kyoto as they could have. Unlike I've said in the video, Kyoto's inconsistencies more or less come from our previous views on the FPS genre. The Finals, as we know, is not a game very commonly seen in the FPS genre, actually very rarely seen. Actually, there are no other games like it. This is why it's very hard to compare it to other games with bad maps. Or not even bad maps, just really misunderstood maps. Because I think what happens with Kyoto is a lot of people expect consistency. And consistency is great, but sometimes it's not even about the RNG, it's about a player's willingness to adapt. If one map is just the exact same playstyle the entire time, it would get more or less repetitive, because that's almost just playing either a shootout or a team deathmatch, or CQB. Because realistically, nobody wants to be fighting in close quarters or long distance for such an extended amount of time. Now, as much as I've said about Kyoto, I've used about 8 minutes to talk about its base mode. I have completely avoided talking about its 2 special modes, because there really isn't much to say. In fact, I could probably summarize my views on Kyoto's extra modes with about a sentence for each. Firstly, we have the platform. Moving platform on Kyoto can only be described as breaking your own kneecaps, lighting yourself on fire, and then riding a unicycle. It is undeniably probably the most painful experience on any map. Kyoto already has many imbalances, making playing such an unfair mode to begin with, such as moving platform, a lot more complex and a lot harder to do. Kyoto is a long-range map. Moving platform automatically forces you into a close-range position, so obviously the amount of inconsistency there is very discomforting. Secondly, suspended structures surprisingly does pretty well on Kyoto. What makes suspended structures fit nicely into Kyoto is the fact that they even out the lower areas. The suspended structures are present in the villa compound, or the lower section of the map. As I've addressed, the lower section is hell. But with suspended structures, it evens it out and makes it a much more balanced and fun experience. And returning to you, the dear viewer, I try with my videos, and hopefully you liked it. If you have a map that you suggest I cover, comment down below, or comment what you thought I've said about Kyoto, because as far as I'm concerned, I've fact-checked myself 3 times. But maybe it's 3 times too little. Anyway, until next time, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.